toys, I'm doing toys. So you two, I kind of wanted to lead off on this one. Just briefly talk about, we should probably all introduce ourselves. I'm Rusty, it's been a year since Comic Con. So let's just start with that. Quick, we'll go to the far end of work. So this way, Armando Roque.
All right, my name is Armando Roque. I'm an independent creator artist. I work for various companies, big and small, from the Skid Master, Jazz Warriors, Super 7, a sale company, to just independent creator artists. I work with them all to be kind of a creative producer for consumer products and toys.
Awesome. My name is Bill Murphy. I have my own company, Fresh Magic Fiction. I make little plastic people. And I also work for Big Bad Toy Store. We have a manufacturing division there called Bigbadworkshop.
My name is Shannon Eric. I write for Bill. We are co-creators of a line called Monstrous, which you can actually find downstairs on the floor at the Toynami booth, thank you. Yeah, that's me.
I'm Arlen. I am a full-time freelance sculptor for this toy collectible industry, working mostly with Hasbro, but also with the
Shannon Denton, Monster Forge Productions, which is somewhat confusing because I was going to be Monster Force, and then I changed it to Monster Forge, but now I'm working with these guys, so we'll have to figure that out later. But it's a lot, we don't like monsters. I started off at Image Comics, and then immediately when Image got started, I worked at Extreme Studios. I was drawing comics for Rob Liefeld, and then 10 months later, I was on the X-Men cartoon, and I was a TV guy. Marvel was still small enough at that point that it's not run like the giant monstrosity it is back then. We were doing toy designs at night for the cartoons we were designing during the day while I was drawing freelance Deadpool comics for Marvel. So it was much more insightful into how all of these things actually all tie in together than a lot of younger people get coming into the industry now. That's my turn. Go for Dirk now.
I'm Dirk Blackman. I'm primarily a screenwriter. I wrote Underworld, Rise of the Lycans, a movie called Outlander, Viking vs. Aliens, Deep Blue Sea 3, writing a comic now with Shannon called Savager, which is incredibly bloody post-apocalyptic carnage, and to balance that out, I'm also writing a book on Santa Claus.
I'm Doc Wyatt. By day, I am an executive producer, showrunner, and head writer for animated TV. Currently, my writing partner and I are the head writers of a show called Lego Ninjago Dragons Rising, which is on Netflix. And we just yesterday on our panel announced season 4 of that next year. But I'm sort of on this panel because nights and weekends, me and a buddy of mine named Gavin, we started a small toy company out of his garage, and that has been sort of a dream of ours for a long time. And so we make indie toys that we crowdfund and get them out there as best we can.
And that's part of why I wanted Doc and Bill to kind of lead off, because I've worked with both of them. They're both great bosses, but then they're also working on their own stuff where now they're the boss of themselves. And so I want you guys to kind of talk about what that's like running teams versus like how do you apply that into like I want to make my own stuff now, but I don't have Disney money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, we learned a lot of what to do from Bill. Bill had sort of led the way on this indie toy front from our perspective. Like, we sort of dreamed of, gosh, what it would be like to make your own toys, but we sort of didn't believe it was a concrete reality until we saw Bill doing it. And Gavin was like, oh my God, can we do this too? And so the first call was to Bill, and Bill was like, yeah, let me tell you about which factories to use, which factories not to use. Let me tell you, he had problems with fulfillment, and he was like, let me tell you the problems I had so you don't have them. And he saved us headache and heartache, and that's sort of how it came to be. But it's, I mean, it is like, we out-of-pocketed the upfronts and then crowdfunded the production. So the money is tight. We have no employees on a regular basis. We freelance. We get a lot of freelance help from folks, and yeah, I mean, The frustrating thing is when you're making a TV show for Lego, for Disney, for somebody, it's like you're like, this needs to be done by now, and then it is done by that time, right? And like when you are like financing or self-financing or crowdfunding, and you're sort of like, you don't really have a timeline. The timeline is, when can we make this happen? And how many hours do we have after my kids go to bed? How many hours do I have to work on this after I've met my deadlines? And so it becomes more measured, I guess, and it can be frustratingly slow.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to unpack for that question, but like, I think there's, where I was at a place where I was like, oh, Kickstarter's a thing, right? And that could be a great way to, raise the funds that you kind of need to do something. Because outside of that, it was very out of reach for a long time, even though I was very ambitious and wanted to do a thing. The interesting part too is like, I was a VFX executive at Netflix for a long time. And that place was great. And it's great to work for a big company because they have infrastructure and they have people and they have money. But they are not very many, right? But when you're smaller and you're doing your own thing, you can really work fast. You get to make your own decisions. There's not a lot of red tape. There's a lot of challenges that go with that, but you can really move pretty fast. If you can find really great people to work with, which is one of the things that I've been so lucky to have with a lot of people on this panel, something special with that. And that's one of the things that I think is fantastic about trying to do these things. So.
Yeah, it's so empowering to be able to do your own stuff now, but it is definitely not always easy. I go back to the nimbleness of it. At Marvel, when we got started, it was so small. We ran into a mutual friend, a guy from the toy business who, gave me all of my freelance in Marvel back in the day, and he's still in Marvel. And what these two just brought up is kind of where I was going with this, which is they went and asked friends for help, or they were a fan of it. They're like, oh, I like what that guy's doing. I'm going to check my ego at the door, and I'm going to go find this person and go ask them, and maybe they'll be cool about it and offer advice. And usually they are. So I really want to encourage everybody to just, if you're really wanting to do this, it's just like any other aspect of any kind of gig. Just being comfortable admitting when you know, when you don't know, you appreciate what they do, and it makes this so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have any issue what I did without these two people on this table, right? Like, I didn't know sculpt. I write okay, Sean's amazing, right? And I was able to, and that carries through today, because it's what Shannon and I were doing, right? So finding really great collaborators is one of the keys that unlock a lot of time.
And usually if you're finding the right people, they're going to go open up the door to more people. I'm meeting some people on stage. A lot of them I've known for 30 years. Some of them we just met. So it's usually that sort of checkbox of like, oh, if you're cool, if you're introducing me to somebody you say is cool, I'm probably going to know you now for the rest of my life. So that's a good thing. Kevin Grevioux?
No, how you guys doing? Sorry, I'm late.
So good. That was a dramatic entrance. Kevin, we just did at the beginning, I won't throw you a question yet, but just tell people what you do, what you like to do.
Okay, well, my name is Kevin Grevioux, and I like comics and monsters, and so that's why I'm here. And I like to create those kind of things, so that's me.
Also the Underworld movies. And he's been in Michael Jackson videos. Multiple threads. So again, most people you'll find when you're getting into doing your own stuff, it really helps if you like lots of other stuff, because there's sometimes the end into creating your own ID or developing stuff. Again, when you're at a company, it helps if you like the material and they're giving it to you to develop and flesh out because you're a pro. But when you're starting off doing your own stuff, the friend circle is really beneficial. I'm trying to keep the schedule here. Okay, IP, creating worlds. We're all creating worlds in different ways. How creators build up IP that leads to other mediums. That's kind of what this panel is about. A lot of us all know each other, but we're not always meeting each other or working with each other. The same thing. Doc and I work together in cartoons. We've got mutual comic friends. I'm sure that's the same for a lot of the folks up here. Everything is story now. So like this is a giant Skeletor that I don't need, but I just bought because I worked on show, and they suckered me into buying it when I was down there taking a picture. But I'm a fan, and so I bought it, and that led me to then talking to the guy who's like, oh, you know so-and-so, and then that led to I have some freelance next week. So, again, tell people what you love, embrace this stuff. I know Skeletor and Shredder as a character. I don't need to know all the ins and outs of this. I got into it because I already fell in love with the story. Sometimes though, you see the visual and you're like, oh, this is something I gotta get it. Armando, I'm gonna let you chat on that too, because we were chatting about it out in the hall. That sometimes you develop, this is the super cool thing I just built. I don't really do it. That's okay too. So I think what I want by the end of this panel is any of you that want to do your own thing, that haven't done your own thing, is if you've got a much less path of resistance to getting your thing out there, go for that. And then develop the IP in the next least resistant. Because it's different. If you're working at a giant corporation, I just get my stuff done and then that gets handed off to another department. And it's not my problem. They're like, you focus on this, you do that. But when you're doing your own material, you kind of gotta juggle and know all this stuff. So you're not just building the project, you're building the mythologies. Kevin and Dirk, I was telling this to you because you guys have started writing entire stories where it's just words, which then became comics. So I'd love to turn you guys to the next. You want to jump?
Okay, well, I actually thought about this thing that might be of interest. Slightly to the left of what Shannon was asking about. It's about adaptation and how I've gone about it. So I was hired to adapt. Y'all know what Nerf guns are? I was hired to adapt that into a half-hour kids show a bunch of years back. And so I looked at it and go, okay, there's a couple things you ask yourself, like, what is sacred? In the original thing, the thing itself, the gun, what's sacred about that has to come over into this show? Well, there's got to be guns in the show. Duh, right? It's a show about the product, right? Okay, great. That has to happen. It's sacred. What about the core? What's the core of this? What's it going to be? And it seemed to me it was about kid empowerment. That is, kids. It's not going to be like 70-year-old people using Nerf guns. It's going to be kids empowering themselves by using these to solve a problem. Great. That makes sense. And can we figure out what the problem is? Because here's the thing about adapting things, is that sometimes there's real problems. What do you do with a Rubik's Cube? They're going to figure it out, but it has a story. What do you do with Viewmaster? They're doing Viewmaster right now. What the heck? Do you know what the poison pill in the Nerf guns is? Kids running around shooting guns. How do you solve that? Because nobody understands. How am I to hello? This is not a good thing. So that became a real problem. So what do we do? I think, okay, there's going to be aliens, and then they're going to release billions of nanobots into the world. They're going to take over. They'll take over adults, not kids for reasons that I can't remember. Take over adults, and that removes them from the equation, which is great because now the kids are going to run the world. Wonderful. Adults, they're mind slaves. They're coming for the kids. Oh, boom! Now I got my logic. My guns are all going to be non-lethal, and it's going to work in this world because they're going to use non-lethal weapons on adults just to incapacitate them, to paralyze them, to put them to sleep, whatever, in order to do mission after mission after mission. So now I've got my sacred, I'm using guns, I got my core, I got
love story that takes place against the backdrop of a centuries-old race war. And you see how that starts to elevate, you know. And then, you know, I have a degree in microbiology. So I was trying to find a way to incorporate real science into it, you know. That's going to become science at the end of the day, you know, but still, that hadn't really been done before, and use these horror characters to make, you know, an action. You see what I'm saying? And mixing genres, you know, you create a new kind of genre in and of itself, you know, on which you can build different things. And I think the same thing with, you know, I Frankenstein too. That ain't Jack that movie but that's basically, you know, my approach, you know, find out what hasn't been done before or what hasn't been done cool, and then that's where I start.
I wanted to throw it over because I know you, Sean, Arlen, Mondo, you guys are building figures. Do you approach it the same way where you have the whole story worked out, or does the story come? So you feel free to jump in on that.
Yeah, definitely. So I work with big companies and small, depending on like what the needs are. I see myself as a creative fixer, so going into these situations, not exactly knowing all the aspects or complete picture of something. Bigger companies, they have like a 5-year plan of where their story's going, what TV's doing, their big movie release, and whatever it's going to be. Independent creators are just, they have this little kind of baby that they don't know what to do with. They have no consumer products in mind for that. And in both situations, I'm there to help them kind of sort through that landscape and figure out how to best navigate that. But as we're hearing from all of our panelists here, story is absolutely key, whether it leads in the product that we're making. It's crucial to have like an outline or just those building blocks that fans are really going to connect with in story points to allow them to gravitate towards what you're making. So, for example, I have this robot here, Super Robot, 70s, 80s, inspired by that genre of TV movies. And then I have a lot of creators that come to me. They have a story outlined, they're not sure what they want to do with it, but I'm able to work with them to really develop a roadmap for them on what's going to be important for them and their brand as they build it up. And usually what I let them know is that it's crucial to build a fan base, make sure that your story and your product is organically seeded together and people just naturally gravitate towards it. And this has been why we see this rise of independent artists, creators out there that might not necessarily have the big dollars behind those big companies. But we're able to see these amazing artists come up because of the great stories that they want to share. And then naturally from that, we see the big companies looking at the little guys and being like, hey, we need to do what that guy over there is doing, right? And then try to emulate that, but not really getting the same organic following that comes naturally from passionate artists, creators. So a great example I have of this is I developed a lot of lines for Super 7 in their reaction figure format. And then actually over time, as they developed so many different action figures, they just have this great nostalgia feel, lots of storytelling involved for Super 7. I get tapped on the shoulder by Spin Master, and they're like, oh, we really want to do this. We want to be into space, and we want to tell the same story. So because I'm an artist creator in that space, they naturally want to work with me to essentially replicate the same look, feel. So I got to do what I was doing at Super 7 for Spin Master, the big company, with their Superman 78 like Kenner style, I should say, the 5 points of articulation figures, because the big guys recognize what the little guys are doing, and they know that there's a lot of power behind the stories
like, so the action figure line that Bill and I are doing is, like I say, it's called Monster Force. And just the very simple pitch is that it's kind of G.I. Joe with classic monsters as the main characters. And so one of the main characters is Dracula. We have a couple of werewolves in the line. There's zombies, there's a Frankenstein type character. But like you were saying, it's important that you can make a very cool toy. And people might buy that cool toy because it's cool. But if you give them a cool character, and you give them a cool story to go along with that character that interacts with the other characters, then we find that, people are interested in the line at that point. And they're interested in seeing what comes next and what is the next wave of the line. How does the story progress? That kind of thing. And as far as I'm assuming everybody out here has an IP that they're working on, one of the things that we kind of use as our approach, which might be helpful, is that there are obvious things that you can do with your IP. And that's fine, but a lot of times that comes off as just sort of like copying or referencing or homaging the stuff that came before. So every time we start up a new character, we look at it, and I'm just realizing as I'm sitting at this panel that I actually got this idea from Kevin, who I have never met before. But when that trailer for I, Frankenstein came out, I was like, wait a second. This is a way of looking at a character that we all are familiar with, but it suddenly has a new aspect to it that makes it really interesting, and it makes me want to see this movie. And so whenever we spin up a new character, we try to say, like, okay, what is the not obvious thing to do with this character? What is something that's kind of a way to come at it sideways that makes people go, oh? And if you can get that reaction out of people, then they're hooked. So that's kind of our approach.
My approach is a little bit different because I'm a visual artist mostly. So I created Space Zombies for Mars, and I started with the idea of the astronaut in space with the shattered glass and the skull. And I showed it to my brother, and he was like, we need to make an album of this. So we created an album with a story, like he's the writer, I guess, more. We came up with a storyline, and then we came up with all the characters, and we kind of built out a comic that we're working on right now. We recorded a full album that's going to be on vinyl, and created a bunch of characters to go with it. So it's a little bit different aspect of creating.
I'm kind of glad you touched on it. I started as an artist. More people know me as a writer now, but just because I would constantly be sketching in my sketchbook, there are 100 times where you're like, I don't know what this is. This looks badass. I got to figure out what this thing is. And it was a benefit. That's kind of where we're going here with it. In the early days, I still don't have money. I couldn't afford to hire other people to do it, so I had to do it myself and figure out how to do it. Or I was trying to get hired on when I was working for these other companies, so I would have the money to go do more of my own stuff. And I think however you get to it, embrace it. Like, we've all got different strengths, so sometimes it starts visual. I've got a lot of visual artist friends, and they just create something powerful, and then they got to go figure out the story. I've got other friends who it's like they've got the whole story, it's pouring out of them, and then they're chasing like, how do I get this into a visual format? And so one of the things I think that benefited me early on is working on Power Rangers and things that didn't have huge budgets, because you got to see people have to go to work, make a thing, and be super creative with less dollars. And I worked on big budget stuff, and there were a lot of people that were really good, but they didn't know how to do anything else. They did the one thing that they were paid for, and they were super awesome at it. They had no clue how everything else was made. And I think when you're kind of starting off, trying to get your own IP off the ground, you got to be able to punk rock. Hope everybody's seen Superman by now. The great thing about punk is it's like fast, it's agile. I've done comics with Steve Niles over the years. I had a Gray Matter sticker on my skateboard when I skated in the 80s. That was Steve's band. It was really weird to find all that out later. He was a punk band, but he also writes and makes comics. Again, entry point to all of this is really just you loving something, chasing it down, and then other pieces you used to have to go ask people like, how do I, you know how to do this, and I don't know how to do this part, help me with this. So, Doc and Bill, I kind of want to turn it back to you guys because you have been successfully doing this, and you're both launching things, and you both have Kickstarters that you've done, and stuff like that. Volunteer someone out about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down, because we've heard across the panel, there's different approaches, right? There's a narrative-led approach, there's a what hasn't been done approach, there's a visual-led approach, and I think that ultimately the answer is that the best approach is the best approach for you, and that like and what you're passionate about matters, like what you care about matters, and like leaning into like what that is. Because at the end of the day, I mean, Shannon talks about how much he's done, right? Like in terms of on the art side, on the writing side, like also, he hasn't mentioned it, but on the business side, but everything, it's such a wide variety of hats to wear, but everything he does because he's passionate about it, because he cares about it. Like the first thing he said was, well, Monster Forge, we love monsters. Like that's it, that's his mission statement, is something he loves. And, I think that at the end of the day, like that's what everything is, what you love, and how you share that love.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think everybody's gonna find it their own way, which I think that's the thing that's really important. If you get really lucky, you find other folks who kind of like the things that you're doing. And the thing that we all have now that maybe we didn't have, 15, 20 years ago, is we have things like social media. We can connect with the people that are into kind of our same interests, which is really great. Like, back when I was a kid, like, yeah, I had a friend in school maybe, but that was it. Right now, I see my son, he's 16 and he has all these online friends. Don't have online friends, but like again, they're all into kind of the same stuff, and it's niche, right? A lot of it's really niche, and that's the really cool part now, right? Like you can really connect with those people, and it helps infuse you too in a real way, like much of what we're talking about here.
It's when I was at Image and Todd McFarlane, one of the founders, was coming to visit. He worked out of Phoenix. We were all actually in Orange County, working in Anaheim. I was at the Extreme Studio steward, and he brought in the Spawn prototype to show us. It wasn't painted. He was just like, I'm gonna make toys, and it blew our mind. Like we were just like, oh, you will successfully do our comics, and then they don't get options. And 100 years down the line, somebody may make a toy. I was just like, I'm making toys. It was just like he jumped in, and I think that was such a great lesson for me early on. Again, taught me like passion. Like he knew that all the guys in the bullpen thought toys were cool. We all thought superheroes were cool. We all loved monsters. And so it's like trying to embrace whatever that creative part of you that you love, and then sharing it with, and being brave to share it with others. When I worked at Pelletier, there was a big thing around the work, and it had all like the tenets of the company, and one of them was like embrace your geekdom. And I really think that is something like that I took to heart. It took me 30 years to get toys off the ground, but I'm in my third toy, and so it's like it's so fun crossing stuff off the list. Where was I going with that, Dirk? I remember now. Thanks, Dirk. So when you work and you're pitching movies, if you come in with the world's most awesome werewolf thing, and they've already got a werewolf thing, what do? They're like, we already have a werewolf thing. And you're like, but my werewolf thing is awesome. Yeah, other guys' werewolf thing is probably awesome too. And so they don't think like us, the creators. And so what you realize is, if I love a werewolf thing and you're making a werewolf thing, I'm gonna support that. Like you were talking about, like in Monsters. I know Kevin, like Channel 56. There was a Creature double feature in New England, and we both were friends for years before we realized we were both watching this show that we thought went out to the whole world, and it was only a New England thing. Where on Saturdays we'd have 2 monster movies back to back, black and white. It was awesome. So things like that really, really help. And the more you put out there, like, hi, I'm so and so, and I don't know what the F I'm doing, but man, I love this. You are going to be rewarded in a way. Yes, there are online problems, but for the most part, people are going to be like, oh, I like that too. That's my jam. And then that'll create those opportunities. But it's so scary sometimes to do it. So definitely do it. even as it's scary.
I would say too, like, one of my favorite things is like, I always like other people's stuff more than my stuff, right? Like, I mean, and that keeps me, excited, right? Like when my friends come and want to make things, I get just as excited about their stuff too. Like, I'm not precious about the things that I do, and I want to promote like other people's things. It's really important to me that like I'm helping to, promote other people's things because I like this stuff and I want more cool stuff, right? So I think it's important that you embrace not only, obviously your passions, but when you find someone who's also making great things, help support them too, and and get the word out there because it's all going to help everybody.
It's I think everybody here has got something they're working on right now that's like precious to them. They're doing it either like we're doing comics for the first time together. And that took a minute to get going, but I'm glad that it's going. It's been so much fun. And sometimes it's just, like we knew that we were going to do this thing. Finding that opportunity to make it real. And there's so many more opportunities now than there used to be. It's just that there's a lot more people doing it. The more you can find that, I think DesignerCon, I don't know, maybe you've been to DesignerCon, it's a great show. The intersection of DesignerCon and Monsterpalooza and me going, which is where Monster Forge came from, I realized, there's people over here that love monsters that don't know, they're making product, that don't know any of my friends over here making toys, that I know love monsters, but that's not what they're doing. And it's like, how can I get all my friends together to make cool stuff together? Because it's way more enjoyable having a whole lot of yeses around you all the time, because it is, all of this stuff's hard. Making anything is hard. So the more you can eliminate no's in your life, or like, I don't know, just and surround yourself with more people like, that's awesome. Like, all right, let's just quit, but now I'm going to tomorrow. Sometimes tomorrow gets you to like 2 years from now. So it's always trying to pursue that ability to find as many yeses in the world around you. Talking about just like the making stuff of cross-media strategy and how they're feeding each other, creation, cross-platform, the more ways people can enter your IP, the more valuable it is. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. I'd love to get Sean and Arlen, you guys to talk about that and how you're embracing the whole like, how do I get people to know who I am, but how do I get this stuff out there, and where's the fandom, and how do I get it to them?
Okay. That's a very good question. I think that we're like if there's one thing that I can just throw on top of everything that you've been saying is that the barrier to making something, to making your own IP, is largely just yourself. And there is this amazing thing that happens when you start making it your thing, whatever it is. And that is that you start meeting people. And you're meeting people who like what it is that you do. You're meeting people who also like the same thing that you do. And every single time that I have worked on something myself or collaborated with people on something, I have met people who basically opened another door to going further with the thing. And that never would have happened if I had just been like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll get around to it. So it's definitely like you'll be surprised at just how much help you get once you take those first couple steps. And as far as cross media platforming or transmedia, it's a very good question. I mean, obviously, making an action figure line, you're making toys, but you wanted to tell a story with those toys. So how do you do that? And we kind of, sort of put our heads together, and we went through a lot of different iterations of like, well, there's the text on the back of the box that kind of says who the character is, but like maybe there's a website that we can build that has something like, do we do a comic book that's really expensive to do? And then Bill had this amazing idea where he was like, why don't we just do a one-page comic book for every single figure and just put that on the inside flap of the box? And it was like, oh, well, there we go. We've got 5 panels to show and tell people who this character is and sort of how they fit into the thing. So by just making that leap of like, let's just incorporate a second medium into this, it suddenly solved all these problems for us. So that's my anecdote.
For ours, I think kind of started with the album, with the music. My brother and I both are musicians and have been since we were 5. It's kind of, we wanted to tell the story musically, so it's kind of a soundtrack to a movie that doesn't really exist, basically. So we have this one story arc that each song carries you through an experience, and that whole experience matches the toys, and that also matches the comic, but the comic is it's the same story but written differently than how you would hear it with the music. So we're trying to incorporate different people to kind of connect to it in different ways. It's kind of how we connect to it.
Thank you. Armando, I wanted to get into creator control. Basically talking about when you're working for other people, again, versus working on your own stuff. And the business of IP theft isn't just fear. It's a business plan for corporations because again, they're just trying to get a thing. But also, I don't want to get too long on this because I don't like to dwell on fear because this comes up with young people all the time. Like if they're afraid that if they put their idea out there, it's going to get stolen. And so I'm looking to address that, and I've got some thoughts on that. I want to go back into these.
Yeah, absolutely. So as an artist creator, whenever I design anything, there's obviously social media platforms that are out there that are great vehicles for some artists to really show off their gifts and talents. And so naturally, though, as a creator, you have that fear in you that, oh, if I put this out there, there's no watermarks or anything on that, someone might steal it from me, or someone's going to take it and just kind of twist it in a way that just enough to make it their own and take it and run wild with it in another direction that I hadn't planned for. But what I found was, working for bigger companies, a lot of those bigger companies were seeking these original creators, artists to really go and come around them, support them, actually even buy out their IP, right? Because they believe so heavily in those things to dedicate money, manpower, full teams to make expansive lines behind these artists that just started off in their garage or like somewhere else, wherever it might have been, that they would have never been discovered without them taking that step forward and launching their idea kind of into the unknown and seeing what happens. So there's definitely ways that artists, creators can protect their babies, right, their creative babies. But it's important that you kind of just take that step forward. And I have a great example, even with my own IP. As a toy designer, I would be like, okay, I'm a toy designer. I need to have a cool business card, maybe that's tied to toys. So I came up with this business card, and everybody loves it. It's just simple, it's clear, it looks like a little toy in a poly bag. But every time I would hand this out, people would go, whoa, what's that robot? I'm like, it's just a robot for my business card. No big deal, guys. I just made it for the business card. But they're like, I want that. Give me that robot. And then flash forward to 2-3 years later, I'm like, why not make the robot? Started my own Kickstarter, got it funded successfully, and here's the robot. And essentially, I just started off with a business card, right? And that was it. I had a story in mind, in my head. I never shared the story. The people immediately gravitated to a design that I created, and I was able to eventually make it a real thing because I just took those steps, right? One step led to another, and then pretty soon as I saw that positive reaction, the organic kind of following behind it, I was able to kind of keep moving forward and make things happen.
Just again, I want to really make your stuff because the amount of creation that you do, if you're very new at it, you're precious about it, you're worried that there's something else out there like that, and then when you're in, you're like, oh my gosh, they slow. When you go to work for these giant companies, you walk in, they got an entire wall of the idea you had yesterday, then you realize oh, there's a billion people working on that. I have one buddy, he's a screenwriter, and if I got a cool idea, I usually text him and be like, hey, are you working on it? He's like, yes, because for 30 years, if I have it, if it pops in my head, I know I just shot me free up a little bit. Kevin Easton gave me super good advice early on. He's like, I made a comic book, I want to make a comic book. And there was a show, and there were cartoons, and there were toys, and there were movies, and it's his empire. But he's like, if I hadn't just thrown it out there, he's like, I wouldn't have had to do that. And he's like, but if it was easy, I would do it again. You know, even have another, you know. So it's just like you got to make the thing. Growth areas, crowdfunding. We've been talking about that. The next Hasbro will be built on Discord. IP development isn't linear anymore. That sounded better. I know, it still sounds better. Thank you. But going into that whole linear development, if anybody's got any thoughts, I want to make sure we got time for questions. So that's part of what I'm moving us towards. But it's just, you know, if we could be brief and go down the line, like, some quick thoughts on how you embrace the creation and like what's your first step to getting a thing out of your head and into some other form?
I think the first step is talking about it. Like, you got a good idea, like find a trusted friend, like you know, whose taste you like or whose taste you share, and like start to talk it through. Like I heard that like Walt Disney's process on all of the early Disney movies, when he was groundbreaking animation and what it was and what it would be, he would just tell the story to anyone who would listen and every time he told it, he refined it a little bit more, and like that's just start playing with the idea.
You know what I usually do is just get it down on paper as fast as I can, and if it's gelled enough, start. You know, I'm not an artist, but I can sketch and do that, and then to a real artist, and you know, just get the ball of wax rolling.
Not be an old bastard. When I started as a screenwriter, I knew that I could just be a screenwriter. I went to great school, I could be a screenwriter, and I made a career as a screenwriter. It worked, I was very lucky. But now it's like I would never, ever tell anyone to just be a screenwriter. I think you have to be a lot of different things. And in the film or TV world, you can be an editor of this or that or the other thing. But here what we're talking about is, no, you can write this movie, but it could be a toy, it could be a game, it could be cars, it could be all sorts of things. I mean, you know, some things maybe are a little more narrow, but stuff that I think all of us geeks do. I mean, you know, it's wide. There's so much. I think we just have to have the guts to think big. My quick one goes back to Shakespeare. Then I could drop Shakespeare on this thing. Did I know himself be true? I had to figure out what kind of creator I was early on, and I think if you have that conversation with yourself, I teach this in classes to experienced people when I'm mentoring, and I teach it to people getting into the business. I love jamming. Like, I love working with other people. Some people do not. They're focused on doing their own thing. They've got their creation, and they plow forward, and that is their path. So I think just like being comfortable with like how you like to operate. I love throwing down a little something, and somebody comes back and you're like, that is way better than something I threw down. I'm in. Let's make this thing. So figure out who you are, and it makes making stuff so much easier.
I honestly just make notes on my phone because I'll be out with my kids or even at a movie or whatever, and I just come up with an idea and I have to write it down really quick, just like come back to it.
That is exactly what I do, Arlen. 100%. The phone, I mean, that is the best use of my phone, totally. And so, you know, I just have documents and documents and documents. They're mostly just like one sentence long, like, what if this, then this? And most of them will wallow in obscurity on my phone forever, but every once in a while there's one that just kind of sticks with me, kind of keeps coming back up, and I just find myself kind of wanting to go toward it. And so, I mean, if there was some general piece of advice I could give, it would be like, whatever your way is of sort of like bringing it into the world, even in a very basic way. If it's just writing up a single page, if it's drawing a single picture or something like that, I'll do something like that, and then I'll call Bill, and I'll be like, I had this idea for something. And Bill's like, oh, that's really cool. Then I it's a good idea. And if he's like, then I know that's one I shouldn't probably follow.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm always, my brain is constantly, and I'm sure all of us are like this, you know, here, my brain is constantly firing. So during this panel, I have 15 toy ideas, right? So it's like, so for me, I'm an artist at heart, right? So I always have usually a sketch pad, whether it's middle of the night or whatever. And again, I have to get it out of my head and into someplace visual. Either that's either a sketch or writing, but like you can't stay anymore. So I have to find a place to put it. So find out whatever that is, you know, and then iterate on it. And then I think a lot of us have said too, it's good to have great collaborators. And it can be a lot of different people. Like, you know, Chris, my friend Chris out here, and we're sending stuff on Facebook, what do you think of this? And, you know, and also like part of that too is the collaboration. I would also echo too. Again, don't be too precious about anything, and really embrace feedback from people who try. Really do it, because like, you know, not everything I make is great. Maybe two things on it, but I got a lot of ideas. But really find people that can be honest with you too, as collaborators, because you really don't want someone who's just going to like everything you do. You really want to find someone who can say, and your stuff will become better if you find it.
Absolutely, I could only echo a lot of the points here that the line over here, but definitely big companies usually take like safe bets, right? But with creators, I always encourage them to take bold steps, to be willing to take those big bets into the unknown, into like uncertainty, into like awkward conversation with family and friends, like you're gonna do what? You're gonna do what kind of project? Or you're gonna make what type of monster? Like really? Like kind of thing? It's like, yes, you gotta go for it. And that's the biggest kind of step to take, right? Is to take that leap into not knowing exactly how it's gonna be received, and just realizing that success is measured in different ways. And really a lot of times for us, the success that we're most happy with is just that we created this thing, we shared it with the world, and they liked it or hated it or were a little bit about it, but we are happy because we made it and we put it out there. And we don't have to have that regret of seeing like, I had that idea and now someone else is making it, right?
And I know we're going to just try and get some questions here real quick. There was something in my notes earlier I was going to add is, again, it goes back to the love, because not everybody is doing their own creation. Bill's making some sweet toys on things he didn't create, but he loves those projects. Same thing with Doc. He's doing these prisoner toys that are fantastic. I've known him. I know that's like that's a TV show he loves. So if you're going to gamble on something, it should be something that you are coming to with a passion, whether you created it or whether you're just, I want to be involved in this thing. Because then you won't regret it. Because even at the end of the day, if it didn't turn out 100% how you wanted, you're like, well, I made that thing. I'm part of now a world that I cherish. So, all right. Well, I guess we're out of time. Is there any quick questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, so like as an illustrator, you can go to Comic-Con and get your portfolio reviewed and get critiques for illustration, but they're like critiquing you to become a professional for Marvel or whatever, right? Is there something similar for someone that's developing their IP, like to get critiqued on like, this is kind of the concepts I have, and like, but to develop this thing, what can I do next, you know?
That's a really good question. I don't, off the top of my head, I know it's because they're holding up to wrap it up, but again, I trust people on the stage. Again, you're the ones I'm meeting for the first time because I trust the people that introduced me to them. And so if you can find that circle, and that just might take a little bit of work, like, and the quickest version of the story is a buddy of mine was trying to break into comics forever, and I kept telling him it's not because you're not talented, it's because there's just not enough jobs, and I have to lose my job for there to be an opening for you to take my job, and that's, you know, that's just the way it works. And so he went on like Archer Twitter feed, just talking about Archer nonstop, and finally one of the directors was like, dude, you really like Archer? And he's like, I was looking at you draw, have you ever done a storyboard test? He's like, I don't know, what's that? So they sent him a storyboard test, and he's been the director for 10 years. The show's off and on, but they brought him in because of his passion. He has this whole group of people now that are honest, genuine, you know, fans of his work in a trusted circle because he expressed love for the thing.